I realized someone was living inside my apartment when the smart home app sent me a notification. Motion detected in the child's room. The problem was, I didn't have children, and I didn't have a child's room. That was what the app called the small storage closet at the end of my hallway. The same closet I hadn't opened in almost 2 months. At first, I assumed the sensor had malfunctioned. Then I opened the camera recording. The screen showed my dark hallway, silent, empty, completely still. Then the storage room door slowly opened from the inside. I moved into the apartment last October. It was an ordinary one-bedroom unit in a recently built complex. White walls, cheap laminate flooring, a narrow hallway stretching from the front door to the bedroom. At the end of that hallway was a storage closet, maybe 6 feet long and 4 feet wide. The landlord told me the previous tenant had used it as a walk-in wardrobe. I filled it with cardboard boxes, an old suitcase, some tools, and clothes I never wore. After that, I barely opened the door. The apartment already had a smart home system installed. There was a camera above the entrance, motion sensors in every room, an electronic lock, voice-controlled lights, and a phone application that connected everything. The landlord gave me full access and assured me that the previous tenant's account had been removed. For the first few weeks, everything worked normally. Then small things started happening. Sometimes the hallway light would switch on in the middle of the night, by itself. I would lie in bed and see a thin yellow line glowing beneath my bedroom door. Usually, the light turned off after a minute. I blamed the motion sensor. Maybe a moth had flown past it. Maybe the system was too sensitive. Then I started hearing the floorboards clicking. The apartment had laminate flooring, and it made a particular sound when someone stepped near the wall. A soft plastic crack. Then another one, a little farther down the hallway. At first, I assumed the building was settling, but buildings don't walk from the front door to your bedroom. Click. A pause. Click. Another pause. Every night, the sound stopped outside my door. I never heard anyone walk away. One morning, I noticed that the storage room door was slightly open, only an inch or two. I was sure I had closed it. I stood in the hallway for almost a minute, staring into the narrow black gap. There was a strange smell coming from inside. Not something rotten, more like damp clothes, old sweat, and the dusty air inside a room that hadn't been opened for years. I reached for the handle. Before I touched it, something scraped against the other side of the door. One long, slow scratch. I jumped back so hard that my shoulder hit the wall. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. Then a cardboard box shifted inside and fell over. That was all. At least, that was what I told myself. I opened the door, switched on the light, and checked every corner. Nothing. There were only my boxes, my suitcase, and the small removable ceiling panel above them. The panel covered some electrical wiring and ventilation pipes. I dragged the suitcase into the hallway and climbed on top of it. The ceiling panel looked undisturbed. Still, I pushed it upward and shined my phone flashlight into the space above. I saw metal pipes, gray insulation, dust. No person, no animal, nothing that could explain the smell. I closed the panel and locked the storage room door. That evening, I bought a cheap rubber doorstop and wedged it underneath. For 3 nights, nothing happened. No footsteps, no lights, no sounds from the storage room. I started feeling ridiculous. I even considered telling my friends about it, but I knew how it would sound. A grown man frightened by a closet and an automatic light. Then, on the 4th night, my phone vibrated at 17A. Unrecognized voice command detected. I stared at the notification. The app kept a record of every command picked up by the apartment's microphones. I opened the history. At 17 AM, the system had recorded a voice from the hallway. The command was only 2 words. Turn around. I was lying in bed, facing the wall. My entire body went cold. I didn't move. The apartment was completely silent. Then my phone vibrated again. Motion detected in bedroom. I was the only person in the bedroom. I slowly opened the camera section of the application. There was no camera inside the bedroom, only a motion sensor. On the screen, the sensor icon was flashing red. Movement, movement, movement. I held my breath and looked toward the bedroom door. Nothing. Then the mattress behind me sank slightly. Not much, just enough to feel as though someone had placed one knee on the bed, right behind my back. I spun around. The room was empty. At the exact same moment, something struck the bedroom door from the hallway. Bang! I screamed and dropped my phone. The door shook in its frame. Then there was another sound. A soft laugh coming from the smart speaker beside my bed. It lasted less than a second. The speaker's indicator light turned off. I left the apartment immediately. I didn't even put on proper shoes. I grabbed my keys, ran downstairs, and sat in my car until sunrise. At 7 in the morning, I called the landlord. He sounded irritated rather than concerned. He told me the system occasionally misinterpreted sounds from neighboring apartments. He said the building's ventilation shafts carried voices. He said the impact on my door was probably caused by changing air pressure. When I mentioned the storage room, he went silent. Not for long, maybe 2 seconds, but I noticed. I asked him if something had happened in the apartment before I moved in. He laughed. It sounded forced. Then he said the previous tenant had been a little unstable. That was all he would tell me. I demanded that he come over and inspect the apartment. He agreed to meet me that afternoon. When we entered, everything looked normal. The bedroom door was undamaged. The hallway light was off. The rubber doorstop was still beneath the storage room door. The landlord watched me unlock it. When I opened the door, the smell was stronger. Sweat. Damp fabric. Something sour. The landlord covered his nose. For the first time, he stopped acting like I was imagining things. We removed every box. Behind my old suitcase, we found an empty plastic water bottle. It wasn't mine. Then we found food wrappers, protein bars, crackers, a flattened package of sliced cheese. All of them had expiration dates from the previous month. The landlord called the police. 2 officers arrived and searched the apartment. They removed the ceiling panel and looked into the space above the storage room. One of them climbed up with a flashlight. He found an opening between the walls. It was narrow, but large enough for a thin person to crawl through. The space connected to a maintenance shaft that ran behind several apartments. Inside, the police found a blanket, a backpack, a flashlight, and a phone charger connected illegally to one of the building's electrical cables. Someone had been sleeping above my ceiling, maybe 4 weeks. The police searched the building but didn't find anyone. They told me it was probably a homeless person who had discovered an entrance through the basement maintenance area. It was terrifying, but at least it was explainable. A person had been entering the apartment through the storage room ceiling while I was asleep. That explained the footsteps, the smell, the moving door, maybe even the voice command. The police recommended changing the locks and sealing the shaft. The landlord promised to handle everything. For the first time in days, I felt relieved. There was no ghost, no cursed technology, just a trespasser, a real person. Somehow, that felt easier to understand. I stayed at a hotel for 3 nights while workers sealed the opening. They covered it with a metal plate and 6 heavy screws. The landlord reset the entire smart home system. He replaced the electronic lock and deleted all registered devices. When I returned, the apartment felt different, safer. I checked the storage room myself. The metal plate was solid. The door was locked. That night, I slept with a chair pushed under my bedroom handle. Nothing happened. The second night was quiet too. By the end of the week, I had almost convinced myself it was over. Then I received an email from the smart home company. The subject line read, "Your requested data archive is ready." I hadn't requested an archive. I logged into my account and found a folder containing activity logs from the previous 6 months. Most of it was ordinary information. Lights switching on and off, doors locking, temperature changes. Then I found a list of registered users. My account was there. The landlord's account had administrator access, and beneath both of them was a third profile. It had no name, only a user number. The profile had been connected to the apartment for almost 3 years. Its access had never been removed. I opened the device history. The unknown user had connected through an old smartphone. The application had recorded every time the phone entered or left the apartment. According to the log, the device had entered my apartment hundreds of times, sometimes while I was at work, sometimes while I was sleeping. But the last connection was what made my hands start shaking. It said the device was still inside the apartment. Connected now. I called the police again. While I was speaking to the dispatcher, I heard a faint vibration somewhere in the hallway. A phone receiving a notification. I stepped out of my bedroom. The sound came again. Psst. Not from the storage room. From the wall beside it. I moved closer. There was a small ventilation grill near the floor. I had seen it every day and never paid attention to it. The vibration came from behind the grill. I grabbed a screwdriver and removed it. Inside the wall was a narrow hollow space, and inside that space was a smartphone. The screen was cracked, but it was still turned on. The smart home application was open. It displayed a live map of my apartment. Every sensor, every door, every light. On the screen, the bedroom motion sensor was glowing red. Movement detected. But I was standing in the hallway. Then I noticed something else. The phone's camera application was running in the background. There were thousands of photographs stored on the device. Photographs of me sleeping. Photographs of me showering. Photographs taken through the narrow opening beneath my bedroom door. And older photographs too. Pictures of the previous tenant. In some of them, he was sitting on the bed, staring directly at the camera. In others, he was holding handwritten signs. I opened the most recent photograph. The previous tenant was standing in the storage room. He looked exhausted, terrified. The sign in his hands said, "It isn't the person in the walls." The next photograph had been taken seconds later. The man was looking over his shoulder. His sign said, "The apartment tells him when you're asleep." Something moved behind me. A soft crack beneath the laminate floor. Click. I froze. Another step. Click. Closer. I looked at the phone screen. A new photograph appeared in the gallery. It had been taken less than a second earlier. It showed me kneeling beside the open ventilation grill. The picture had been taken from the end of the hallway, from behind me. I turned around. The hallway was empty. Then the smart speaker in the kitchen activated. A calm electronic voice said, "Welcome home." I ran. I left everything behind and moved out that same day. The police kept the phone as evidence. They never identified the person who had lived inside the walls. The previous tenant had disappeared several months before I rented the apartment. His family had reported him missing, but no one had connected the case to the building. The landlord sold the apartment soon afterward. I moved to another city. I stopped using smart home devices. I covered every camera. I removed the microphone permissions from every application on my phone. For almost a year, nothing happened. Then, last Monday, I received a notification from the old smart home app. I thought I had deleted it. The notification said, "A new resident has been added to your home." Underneath was a profile photograph. It was a picture of me sleeping in my new apartment, taken from inside my bedroom. And below, it was a message from the administrator. "You should turn around." I didn't. I'm still sitting here, facing the wall. And for the last 10 minutes, I've felt the mattress slowly sinking behind me. If you have ever experienced something similar, tell me in the comments. But before you do, check which devices are connected to your home. Title options 1. My smart home app said someone was inside my apartment too. Someone was living inside my walls. But he wasn't the real threat. 3. My security app sent me a photo of myself sleeping. 4. Motion detected in the child's room. I don't have children recommended video description. I thought my smart home system was malfunctioning when it detected movement inside a room I never used. Then I checked the camera footage and saw the door opening from the inside. What the police discovered above my ceiling should have ended the nightmare. It didn't. This realistic first-person horror story is about smart home technology, hidden spaces, surveillance, and the terrifying possibility that someone may know your home better than you do. Use headphones for the best experience.